If you've traveled anywhere through Nashville International Airport, there's a pretty good chance you were greeted by live music at some point.
Hi, beautiful.
You may have noticed the small stage that sits just past the point of no return, right before the escalators that lead to baggage claim. And if you happen to pass by there at the right time, you might catch Joe West performing, usually with a big smile on his face. You'll see flight crews give a familiar wave. Sometimes folks will even dance a little as they wait to pick up a loved one, or stop to take in a few songs.
Because I've been taking pictures of these guys, so is this somebody I should know?
My name is Michael Farrand. I'm from Vermont. I'd never seen him before, so I just texted a picture of him to my friends. One of them is taken to Memphis, and I'm pretending to be the big Nashvilleian, and I just said, well, this is the kind of thing. We just, at our cafes, at our airports, we just have Joe West, It's kind of amazing. It's perfectly Nashville. So far, I'm very impressed. They started out really low-key, and the organist said, oh, we're just practicing. I said, understated can really work. They were very, you know what I mean, which is sort of jazzy. And then they did a Linda Ronstadt cover of a James Taylor, so I'm sold.
Winds of change are blowing wild and free. You ain't seen nothing like me. I'd go hungry, I'd go black and blue, and I'd go crawling down the avenue. There ain't nothing that I wouldn't do, make you feel mine, make you happy, make your dreams come true, to make it feel.
Joe West is officially the house band at BNA, and he's often joined by his daughter Rebecca, whose voice you just heard singing those harmonies. Music definitely runs in this family, going back to the 1950s. That's when Joe's parents formed the first African-American country and western duo. And that's a story you'll definitely want to hear. I'm Demetria Kaladimos. It's Banner and Company. Well, Joe, welcome, and thanks for taking time. I know you are busy. How many days a week playing music out there at BNA?
4 to 5 days every week I'm there playing.
Well, you've got one of the most diverse audiences in the world. You probably never see the same people more than once.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've made lots of friends, so there actually is a repeat of people. I have to see a lot of new people, but I have lots of friends because of the airport and the people that I get to meet there. So pretty wonderful for me.
Yeah. How did you get that gig?
I actually got that gig through Tootsie's initially. They had a pre-game stage, post-security stage, pre-game security stage, and I auditioned for that stage downtown at the big Tootsie's, and they gave me a Wednesday. A guy named Greg Humphrey, who was the booking guy, is my good friend. He passed away, but then he gave me a Thursday, and then the airport kept coming by the stage, and they took over my whole life. They wanted me on the stage every day, and I did that for tips only for a long time, and then they decided to pay me to do that job. And 13 years later, I'm the actual official house band now at the airport, and so I get to play with some of the greatest musicians in the world on those stages there. And that program, I'm not sure if you guys know much about that program, but the music program at the airport is extraordinary. The whole arts thing, when you walk through the airport, you see all these great pieces of art that's part of the BNA arts program, and so they've been just so good to me about allowing me to be the guy, the face that you get off the plane and see this guy playing. And it's a dream. It's a dream come true for me. The airport, I opened for Keith Urban recently because of the airport world.
Wow.
All these killer things that have happened in my life. And so I'm good, I'm good. I'm good.
Before we leave the airport, I asked you, you said you've got a great audience and you see some of the people time and time again. But how many people stop and pause and listen? What's the dynamic?
Well, it's really cool. The Green Bean Coffee Stage area, where there's people that are there all the time. I mean, it's like having an audience all the time. I play puckets inside the airport also. Anytime you're inside past security, there's a lot of people in there. So you have an audience all the time, every time you play. And so it's up to you to kind of get them captivated. But, man, they're right there. It's beautiful. And so I get to meet wonderful people.
Give me a typical set list. What are you playing? Covers and original
I'm doing
stuff?
Covers and originals. I can give you James Taylor. I can give you Kenny Rogers. I can give you Stevie Wonder. I can give you Bill Withers. I can give you just about anything starting in the 70s is my genre, our genre.
Yep.
Are you with me on that?
I'm with you.
And
That's the best.
Merle Haggard's my absolute favorite country guy. Stevie's my favorite R&B guy. Kenny Rogers is my favorite crossover country guy. James Taylor's my favorite singer-songwriter guy. So those four are my influences. Even in my songwriting, that's what kind of comes through is those four main guys. So,
if there's just an overall most requested, what is it?
Oh, that's a good question because my genre is so diverse. Their requests based on what they hear once I start playing, and so I get all kind of stuff.
I bet.
But most of the time it's based on the same guys. James Taylor, they'll get Shower the People, they'll want Big City by Merle Haggard, they'll want You Are the Sunshine of My Life by Steve. They'll want those things that they know that they can kind of hear in my world. Wow.
There have been more inroads made by artists of color in country probably in the last 10 years than the previous 100, but not really. As you dig into history, are you yourself surprised by the influences and the influencers that are not really given their due?
That's a two-sided question. I am, and what I've seen on my side is the difficulty, first of all, to get in the door.
Yeah.
I've had doors shut in my face since I've been in Nashville still. I mean, I was on this show called the Charlie Daniels Talent Roundup. I finaled on that show, and there were lots of people. We got to spend a whole week with Charlie, which is awesome. He was amazing. But there was a couple guys that were on the show with me, and backstage they were so nice to me, and after the show was over, though, I'd see them out, wouldn't even talk to me. I'd stick my hand out and, hey, man, great to see you, wouldn't respond. Those kind of difficulties are still kind of weird to me, why that still happens, but the wonder and the beautiful thing about it is when you get somebody to understand. And you do get a door open when you do get to open for Keith Urban, or the airport gives you this great platform to really express yourself musically. It feels so different and so wonderful and so wild. And to see my mom walk into a place, an all-white venue, and do the Long Black Limousine by Merle Haggard. They thought they hated her when she walked in, and now they're hugging her neck when they're leaving. That's what matters to me the most. There's always going to be difficulty to try to get these doors open, kind of get the journey thing. And I'm grateful to be part of that, work. But I can't worry about it too much because I have a job to do.
Yeah.
A song can change your life. That's my mantra now. And I have a card in my wallet. I love to share this. I keep this in my wallet at all times. And I got it laminated. This guy, Chef Tim, says, "Your music may have saved me." At the airport, in my tip thing, I got it laminated so I could remind myself of why I do what I do, you know?
What's the backstory on Chef Tim?
I don't know. I tried to call him. He wouldn't return my call. So I'm hoping he's okay, you know?
But that's what was in the jar.
That was in the jar. Right there. It says, "Your music may have saved me. Thank you." It says, a song can change your life. I mean, don't get me started. That's why I'm here, you know, is
That's wonderful.
this journey.
It's Banner and Company. I'm Demetria Kalodimos. We'll be right back.
The Apple Watch Series 10 is here. It has the biggest display ever. It's also the thinnest Apple Watch ever, making it even more comfortable on your wrist, whether you're running, swimming, or sleeping. And it's the fastest charging Apple Watch, getting you 8 hours of charge in just 15 minutes. The Apple Watch Series 10, available for the first time in glossy jet black aluminum. Compared to previous generations, iPhone XS or later required. Charge time and actual results will vary.
You come from a musical family.
I do.
And I know your parents should be better known than they are. So give us a little history review here.
So my dad, Sarge and Shirley West were their names, and they were the first and only African-American country western duo. There's been a documentary released about them called A Song Can Change Your Life. You can download that, 30 minutes of your life, but it talks about my parents' journey and also my father's relationship, that we had a sort of rocky relationship, but it's also about reconciliation, how we kind of got reconciled through music, essentially how that happened.
Yeah.
They had these two big records, came to Nashville, cut these two big records, Ain't It a Shame, and one called We're Gonna Have a Good Time Tonight. Stone cold country, traditional hardcore country. My mom was a gospel singer that my dad converted to country, and so there was this sort of soul gospel, country gospel thing that happened in the early days, and that's sort of the style that I'm doing now, is because of my mom and dad. But I have a song called Daddy's Dream, and it talks about, you know, my dad's dream to be here and how I'm actually living literally my dad's dream right now.
And Dad came from where?
He came from Coal Hill, Arkansas, and how my dad discovered country music is from picking cotton in cotton fields, but there was always these honky-tonks that were close. And he would hear that music in the distance, you know, and he tells this great story about him laying in ditches outside these honky-tonks, listening to Hank Williams and all this great music, and that's how he fell in love with it. And I swear the first thing I heard when I came out of my mom's womb was Charlie Pride's Mama Tried. Tell people that story. That's how much he loved that music, you know. And so he just put this thing together with my mom and my dad, and there's a guy named Alex Zanitas who produced the record, and Tom T. Hall, who everybody knows Tom T. Hall.
Of course,
would
the storyteller.
He'd come to town to write poems and songs with a guy named Miller Williams, who's the father of Lucinda Williams. And my dad and Miller Williams and a guy named Jim Whitehead, who was a professor at the University of Arkansas, and Tom T. would get a hotel room when he'd come to town. They just write. And so that's how that started. And just because of those relationships, they heard my mom and dad's music and helped them get this record deal. And that's how that happened, was through all those people.
Now, Sarge had to be your dad's nickname.
His name is Lloydus Wyatt West, is his real name, but he was in the military, serving the Air Force, and that's how he got the name Sarge, is through the military thing. So.
And your mother was raised up in church singing?
She was a gospel singer and got asked to sing back up with Ray Charles at one point. She was monstrous.
A Rayette?
She was almost a Rayette. My dad was in part of the Church of Christ. I don't know if you guys know much about the Church of Christ. No instrumental music.
Right.
That whole thing. And so my mom didn't come from that background. It was kind of a challenge for her. And my parents got kicked out of excommunicated from the church because of these shows they were doing, country music shows they were doing. Hurt my dad for a long time, but because of the gospel background, man, that thing flew like a jet. It was amazing, them together. And my dad was a brilliant entertainer on stage. He got away with a lot of things you would never get away with, things he would say from the stage.
Such as?
Well, his band members were all white band members, of course. There was no, and all the audiences were white. And this guy, Ken Harvey, who was his guitar player, there's a clip in this documentary where my dad's calling him over to, just to be with him. And he said he just wanted to see if he could get a white man to do what he wanted him to do. Live on stage in the 60s, you just didn't do that, but the whole audience would laugh. And I would literally watch my parents go into these places, Harrison, Arkansas, where the KKK is around the corner, and a lot of tension in that room, Just like when Charlie's records released, not everybody knew my parents were black. They didn't know that when they heard the records. And so when they came to these shows, there was a surprise. You could literally hear a pin drop when they walked in the room. Well, this was in Harrison, and his all-white friend bands went to the stage, everything was cool, and then they walked in, and it got pretty quiet. They walked straight to the stage, and my dad and his brilliant, courageous style, just got up to the mic. And I think the first song they did was Merle Haggard's song, "The Highway Is My Home." And you could start to feel the room change a little bit. And by the time they got done with the first song, man, everybody's clapping their hands. And then my mom did the long black limousine, and that was it. It was over. The rest of the night was easy, And they line up, before they leave the room as they're leaving, and my dad's shaking these white guys' hands, and my mom's hugging the white gals' necks, and they just changed that moment.
Describe your father's voice. Who did he sound like in today's ears?
Of course, a lot of Charlie Pride was the big one, obviously, because he was the guy at the time, So there's a little bit of that styling. His favorite was Merle Haggard, and so sometimes you'd hear a little Merle Haggard flavor, but he was his own voice at the same time as he was influenced by those guys, but he had his own voice. And you can go to iTunes and download 2 of the songs. We're Gonna Have a Good Time Tonight and Ain't It a Shame, it's what it's called. And you can hear my dad and my mom's voices on those recordings.
And there ain't no use to complain. Ain't it a shame? Ain't it a shame? Ain't it a shame the way it hurts to give? Ain't it a shame? Ain't it a shame?
Now, did those records chart?
I don't think they charted. And I have all this information that I recently got. Some of this information is new to me because I was with them, but there was no internet, there was no cameras.
Sure, yeah.
But we're working on a display at the Country Music Hall of Fame, and so because of that and because of the documentary, we've dug and found all this information, newspaper articles, and I have reels and reels and reels of music, live performances that my parents have done over the years, where you can hear the history. You can literally hear the history happening, And I have one great big reel that someone gave me from my hometown, I think is part of the sessions where they actually tracked the songs, and we've not been able to find someone who can convert that for us. But just because of those things, we're that's the history I'm discovering now, is these questions that you're asking me. Some of them I won't know because we're just discovering this information.
Now, were your folks able to make a living off of music?
They made a living. They did make a living off of music. My dad was a body shop guy for many, many years. Son's Body Shop was He worked for them, but he also had 6 kids he had to feed. And so there was a good space of time where a couple of years where they made a good living at it. But my dad did not want to go on the road and do all that and leave 6 kids in the family. And so he gave up his career for his family. But he also taught us. He handed the torches to his kids, you know. And me in particular, I was the one who really loved it more than I think the rest of them, and worked really hard to try to make his dream happen. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm sitting across from you now, because of my dad's dream. So.
It's Banner and Company. My guest is the most heard musician at the Nashville Airport, Joe West. Recall your earliest musical memory where you actually had the guitar in your hand, or you were actually in front of the mic singing?
I remember my dad bringing me my first guitar. We were living in this little house. He came down the stairs in the basement, and it had 3 strings on it, because we were pretty broke, pretty poor. It was the greatest thing that ever happened. He handed it to me, and I could play almost right away. I could kind of make music on the guitar. And then he got me strings later. We got it all strung up, and he taught me G, C, and D, and the rest is history. I worked really hard after that point to learn well, but I'll never forget that day when I got my first guitar. That was the turning point in my dream to be a full-time musician.
And he was supportive.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my dad, did my first club shows when I was like 14. He'd take us to these clubs, get us in, because he was kind of a big deal in town, you know, and he'd take us to the Library Club and these places, and he'd let us watch these musicians, and then he would get us on stage, you know, in those rooms. And so, super supportive.
Let's talk a little bit more about I hesitate to say the unpleasant side, but there were some realities in your family that affected your relationship.
Yeah, my father was impacted by the difficulties of, I think, life overall, but racism, as you know, is a big deal. Still is these days. But I was always wondering why my dad was angry all the time. But I did watch situations where there were the colored-only signs or the white-only signs, and my parents had to deal with some of that. We did too, but it was more us looking at our parents not being able to go into certain places, even in the music world, you know. But my father, great provider, great, you know, I mean, so much I loved about my father. But the one thing that we don't talk about a lot is domestic violence. And he was one of those guys, you know. And it took me a long time to forgive some of the experiences that we went through watching my dad and mom together. But we were part of this really great church in Chicago. We were in Chicago for 10 years. Oak Park is a specific place we lived, but church was a big deal in my life when I was younger. We were part of this church in Tulsa. This guy came down from Chicago, Marty Fuqua. I'll never forget his name, killer. But he flew us up to Chicago to kind of, you know, do some music up there, and then he asked us to move there. But that particular church focused on family. And they persuaded me to get this thing resolved with my dad. They said, you've got to get it resolved. And so the one thing I knew I could do was write a song. So I wrote this song called Daddy. And I'll never forget this moment, because this is the moment that changed our relationship forever. We went home for vacation. And I'm sorry, I got to kind of take a deep breath. But you know, a lot of family members were in the room, and our parents, we'd always sing around the table in our space when we came home, you know. And I just said to my dad, hey, Dad, I got this song I want to play for you called Daddy. got done with the song, and both of us were both in tears. The whole room was in tears. And it's the first time I remember my dad embracing me and saying, "I love you." It's the first time I remember that ever happening. But that was a great moment because he never laid a hand on Mom again. He never laid a hand on us again. It changed everything, changed. And so music became this force in my life that I knew I could impact the lives of other people. The name of the documentary is called "A Song Can Change a Life." That's the reason it's called that, is because that's what happens when you get music in the right place.
Can you give us a line or two of Daddy?
But I'll give you the chorus. "Oh, Daddy, Daddy." It's really funny. It's hard for me to say these without having a guitar in my hand.
Sure, I know.
But I still remember a long time ago, food on the table, the warmth of a coat.
We had all we needed, though we were poor. But you made it seem like we had so much more. Oh, Daddy, Daddy, one word means so much. Oh, Daddy, Daddy, shows how much you love, how much you love.
It just goes on with simple phrases about how much I loved my dad, in spite of everything else.
Now, what age were you when that reconciliation sparked?
I was probably in my late 20s.
So a lot of time had passed with difficulty.
A lot of feelings inside, and still though I still loved my dad, even in spite of that. There's still this love that you still have for people that you're close to, because he did a lot of great things for us and with us, and I watched the impact that they had on other people's lives through music, and so there was still this huge admiration, and I just admired my dad so much. It was just a weird thing for both of those things to be in the same space at the same time. It was difficult, but it feels good now. I mean, it feels great. So
And your dad is gone, right?
my dad is gone. My mom's in memory care in Arkansas. When we go back, we play music and everything comes back. It was a ruptured aorta.
First of all, did you have symptoms, or did something like that hit you like a snap?
Well, I found out in high school I had high blood pressure. So we always struggled with blood pressure, but we had gotten it 5 years before, 3 years before, something like that. Blood pressure was perfect for all that length of time, but the aorta had been pumping so long, all those years, it just literally just gave out, and so that's essentially how it happened. And man.
Is this like crippling chest pain? Like, did you collapse? What happens?
Well, I had a real job at the time. I was working for Marshall's department store, and Miss Polly, my fitting room gal, was walking around all night going, "You don't look right. Something's wrong." Her husband had died of a heart attack, so she just had this sense about it. And I was at the service desk, and it felt like someone had taken their hand and just shoved it down my throat. I mean, it was brutal. And I went and laid down in the back break room and thought it'll pass. Made it to my manager's office, and I blacked out. And I thought, something's wrong. My wife and my kids were in Arkansas. I'm Mr. Workaholic guy. I didn't want to go. They're on vacation. I called her and said, something's wrong. She said, call our family doctor. I called him. He said, get to the ER yesterday. I blacked out again. And I had a picture of my family on my desk, and I got on my knees, and I literally prayed. Right about that time, Miss Polly comes knocking on the door. And they got me to her car, and they drove me to Summit Hospital. And all I remember is them putting me in a helicopter, shooting me up, and waking up 4 or 5 days later in the hospital with all my family around.
Wow.
I made it, you know. And so
That has got to be an incredible operation.
it was incredible. I'm not sure if you guys know much about this thing, but they had these 2 wires connected to me. And at the end of the thing that day, the gal came and just pulled them out, you know, and they patched up the little holes and sent me home. And took me probably 9 months to recover from all that. They break your sternum. They do all this stuff, you know, to fix that thing. But I'm here. I will
And
tell
that
you,
was how long ago?
That was 2005 is when that happened. I will tell you right now, I have what's called an aortic root dilation, which means the aorta has started to dilate again, which it cannot do. So they're going to have to go back in and do that again. And there's one other procedure they might be able to do to keep that from, you know, not as evasive as that. I have a cardiologist looking at that now. But it changed my life. It was the worst thing and the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because it gave me the courage to really pursue my dad and our dream. And today I can't believe my life. I mean, I can't believe what I get to do.
Banner & Company is a production of the new Nashville Banner. Our producers are Steve Harouche and Andrea Tudhope. Original music is by Verlin Thompson. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or go to NashvilleBanner.com. You're in good company. We do a little thing here on Banner & Company where the final question in this interview comes from a previous guest.
Oh!
And see that fishbowl?
Okay.
Choose you one.
Wow. Previous guest.
Yep.
I'm scared.
No need to be scared.
Scared of this. Okay. What was the first film?
What was the first film that you saw that had a black character? What did you think?
Ooh, who's the question from?
Hazel Joyner Smith. Who was the first film that you saw that had a black character? Boy, that's a good. I think it was Sidney Poitier, and They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. I think it's the first one I saw.
Yep. Is that In the Heat of the Night? Is that the name of the film?
Yeah, In the Heat of the Night.
In the Heat of the Night.
In the Heat of the Night. Wow, what a great question.
What a great actor.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I watched him for years and years and years and years and years. Love him. Yeah, powerful force.